Okay, today we're looking at a game called Polygons, and the idea is to learn about how slight discrimination can change settlement patterns. So the squares prefer to be the squares slightly, and likewise for the triangles. So here we go. Got to move these little guys around until they're all happy. Okay, see, he's happy. He's got some other squares around him. All right. Unhappy. Too happy. There we go. Oh, he's a little bit mad there because he won't be around some triangles. So maybe if I pull this guy over. No, he's still not happy. No, he's not happy. They're all happy, but he's not. He's kind of meh. Maybe if I put him over here, move him there. Okay, now we got two that aren't so happy. Okay. Alright, so they're all somewhere between happy and meh now. Let's try it again. Here we go. Alright, there we go. And you can see how their slight preferences lead to a very segregated board with only 3 areas of triangles and a lot of blue going through here. Alright, sometimes a neighborhood just won't become square and it's not their fault and a triangle will stick around, and a triangular neighborhood will become square, but they can't help a squares ain't interested. Alright, in the next bit, unhappy shapes automatically move to random empty spots. This also graphically tracks how much segregation there is over time. Alright, let's take the move here. Okay, definite pattern. 52% segregation. Alright, these are good shapes, nice shapes, and yet, even though they only have a slight bias, the entire shape society cracks and splits. Quality is an unstable equilibrium. The smallest of bias can push a whole society past a tipping point. Alright, let's adjust the shape's bias. Let's make the shapes very biased first. Alright, that just doesn't seem to be happening. Let's move it to 50%. Alright, 77% segregation. Let's drop it to 0%. Well, of course, I got a new board. Nobody moves. And we're at 6% segregation. 5%. How about 10%? How about 30%? Yeah, it didn't take long to get to 55. Why don't we go up to 75? New board and go. This could take a while. Okay. Let's try 90. Okay. Okay, 50%. Every day you're not shuffling. World starts segregated. What happens when you lower the bias? Alright. Slide it down to 30. Nope. 25. No change, no mixing back together. Oh, now they're all happy. Move if, okay. Yay, confetti. All right. At first, we're going out on, you know, be isolated, working together step by step. We'll get there. And a sandbox to play in. Let's go narrow here. 40, 60. And start moving. Let's make the board emptier. 20. And there we go, 50-50. All right, broaden it a bit. 30. $70. All right, 10. and 90. So we have a majority of blue. Yeah, it's just not happening. Okay, wrapping up. Small individual bias, large collective bias. This one says culture is shapist. They're not saying the individuals are shapist. They're not taking you personally. Past taunts the present. Your bedroom floor doesn't stop being dirty because you stop dropping food all over the carpet. Creative qualities like staying clean. It takes work. It takes work. It's always a work in progress. Demand diversity near you. If small biases create the mess we're in, smart anti-biases might fix it. Look around you, your friends, colleagues, that conference you're attending. If you're all triangles, you're missing out on some amazing squares in your life. That's unfair to everyone. Reach out beyond your immediate neighbors. Okay, cool. Let's see. Based on game theorist Thomas Schelling, his 1971 paper, Dynamic Models of Segregation. All right. And feel free to use this in your classroom. I think I will. Okay, so a few thoughts about the game. It's a puzzle game. The moves are made in the first game by dragging slightly shaped polygons to place on the board that put them in more of their own kind. Does not include time pressure. Players have as long as they wish to move the polygons. I think it does a very effective job of showing the effects of a slight preference on segregation. Players learn that even slight bigotry results in a greater segregation. It simulates bigotry that leads to segregation. Excuse me. A lecture or PowerPoint tells about bigotry. The game can be dismissed as just a game unless facts and history are presented somehow. I think maybe a YouTube video or some further explanation of Schelling in the 1971 paper and how this all works would be a great aid in using this in the classroom. The game could be dismissed as just a game unless facts and history are presented somehow. The game could be a great activity to study a lesson about bigotry, but the facts must also be presented to make the lesson persuasive. I think it'd be great to use as an opening activity on a geography lesson about settlement patterns, or in civics if we're talking about civil rights and fair housing legislation and why that's the law in the United States or whichever country we're talking about. Game by itself, I like it. I do think we need a little bit more to give context to it as far as maybe audio visuals, case history, so forth, which of course a teacher could do that or have the students create that. as part of an assignment. Maybe have them make a presentation about shapes and how that works. You might not satisfy all stakeholders if you just have the kids play the game. There tends to be a bias against gaming among some, and they might evaluate the lesson as being just playing games and not serious enough without some additional materials, readings, YouTube videos, lecture, PowerPoint, something to give it more context. I don't think that's necessarily a good way to evaluate the lesson. I think the game by itself teaches a great deal and should be sufficient, but a teacher has to be aware of the biases around them in their evaluation. I think I'm going to use it with my geography lessons on settlement patterns. Maybe use it as well for the lessons where I talk about civil rights and fair housing. I think an English teacher could maybe use it with To Kill a Mockingbird, which this week was announced as America's most beloved novel. I think that the bias there in the game maybe speaks to the implications of a more subtle bias than the one you find in the book, although of course we can adjust the slider in the game and see the effects. I think it is a great point of making its case about the effects of slight bigotry. I think an option to display maybe more information about each polygon, maybe some way to light up the polygons around it or show maybe some numbers about its unhappiness, something to like an overlay to explain more of what's going on in the so-called thinking process of the polygons for the players might be good. I think also might be useful to allow a time slider to slow down or speed up the simulations, because they might move a little bit fast for some students to really pay attention to or to kind of get what's going on, especially younger players. I think this will be a great part of the lesson. I'm working on getting it unblocked. That may be unblocked at this point at our school. I'll put in a request today, and first time it didn't quite work right, but maybe by now the unblock is straight and it's working. But they are going to unblock it for me so I can use it in my classes. How could you repurpose and use them in different teaching, learning, subject content contexts? Well, I definitely think a math teacher could use this as well. I'm sure there's some mathematics lessons within this that's math-based. Not quite sure how a science teacher would use this really, unless you have some tie-in with some species that have some sort of preferences along these lines. But honestly, I can't think of any. I'm not a science teacher, so I'm not sure about that. Coding teacher, since this is open code and there's source code is available, I could see coding teachers opening this up and having students perhaps add a third polygon, maybe circles. And what's it like when you have 3 different groups or maybe 4 different groups? Put in some pentagons and find out what happens if you have multiple groups. I think that could be a great coding project for students to work on to make a multi-polygon society with many types of polygons and not just a dualistic polygon society. All right, so those are my thoughts about polygons. I like it. I plan to use it in my classroom. I think it's a great lesson. Teaches a lot about bigotry and settlement patterns and why we have fair housing and so forth, and what might be next steps beyond fair housing to equitable housing in the United States and abroad. Thanks for watching.